Okay, what's up, guys? I'm Trevor. We're back with another Big Red Fever video, and today we're going to be talking about the transfer portal as it wraps up. It's been open since January 2nd, and today is the close on the 16th. So Nebraska's at 17 offers to this point, and they're coming off a 7-5 season, 7-6. Kind of didn't end the way we wanted it to, but these last 2 weeks give us some positive momentum moving forward. So we're just going to chat it up about all the additions and what each room kind of looks like position by position heading into 2026. So getting started, why don't we look at the quarterback room? So we'll go ahead and start, with obviously TJ Lateef is in there. Coming back, he'll be a sophomore this year. 3 years of eligibility remaining. They started with one scholarship quarterback, after Dylan Rhule left and Marcus Davila. And then, they added 3 over the past week or so. So we'll go ahead and talk about that. Elliot, do you just kind of want to run us down on your thoughts about the quarterback room moving forward?
Yeah. As the end of the season, rolled around, Dylan Rhule entered the portal, that was before the bowl game. And then Marcos Davila, we only had TJ Lateef on the roster, Jalen Gramstead too. And some maybe a few other walk-ons. I was pretty concerned, about the state of the quarterback room, because if Lateef went down in that bowl game, we were going to be having a NAIA player. Jalen Gramstead probably would have been serviceable, but
Sure.
I was concerned about the depth. But they had Kenny Minchey at first, and then we the whole debacle with Kentucky, lost him, and then we pivoted really quickly to Calandria. I would argue that he's a better quarterback than Minchey would be, especially for us. I think he's a really good fit, kind of for what Dana Holgorsen wants as our quarterback.
Sure.
And then obviously, we brought in Daniel Kalen, and then that 2026 quarterback Tanner. I won't try that last name. I don't know, butcher it, but yeah, I was really happy with what the staff did. Turning around that quarterback room for sure.
Yeah, sure. I think the most important thing too is really it kind of shows how quickly things can rebound in the transfer portal. Just like you said, they were down to one scholarship quarterback, and then all of a sudden, within a week or so, they added 2 transfer portal quarterbacks, and then a kid out of the high school ranks. So, what's interesting is regardless of how the depth chart shakes out for next year, you have 3 quarterbacks that I would say are really, really capable of leading an offense. And, at some point finding success, especially in regards to the players that they have coming back that will, kind of be a supporting cast for them. So, I would say they're in a good spot. And I wrote about it, but I would say potentially this is probably the most optimistic I've felt about a quarterback room at Nebraska moving forward. And it's probably not going to be something that's super common in the transfer portal era to have 3 quarterbacks that, have either started a game or have played meaningful reps in a game at the Power 4 level. And especially at a school like Nebraska, that's not going to be common, just with the way things have been over the last 10 years or so. So I would feel very optimistic about it going forward. Will, I guess I don't know if you got any thoughts.
Yeah, I do. I was just thinking about this. I mean, when you talk to a lot of Nebraska fans about the quarterback position here, I mean, a lot of them get mad that we keep bringing in guys that are inexperienced and have that potential but haven't been proven yet. And Nebraska kind of went that way with Minchey, but as we know, he obviously flipped, and he was a backup at Notre Dame last year. But when you got a guy like Calandria, he's coming off Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year, and he has that experience, like guys like Dylan Rhule, TJ Lateef. Minchey was primed to come into a position where he hadn't exactly had experience. So I'm really happy that we finally got a guy with experience and has succeeded at that.
Yeah. I agree, honestly. And I think one of the things that's super interesting is, last year they obviously brought in a Davila kid that, hadn't played. He didn't play at Purdue. So he had no experience, in college yet to date. And then you kind of replaced him with a Daniel Kalen who, as a backup has played, whether Calandria starts or it's Lateef or Daniel Kalen, whoever. All 3 of those guys come in with some experience, to a various degree. And then you're at least going to have one backup that has starting experience at the Power 4 level already. So I would say moving forward, just from an experience level, it's kind of a roster-wide attack from the transfer portal that they're adding these kids that have played in games and, will be ready for the moment when it comes. And that's super, super exciting for me. So I guess if you guys don't have more comments, we can move into the running back room. It's been really quiet, and probably a lot of people get mad about that. I would say that they didn't add, a running back, or really haven't even looked. I think they offered maybe just one scholarship out and never secured a visit for it. Losing Emmett Johnson, that's tough. You're not necessarily asking them to replace the Big Ten running back of the year. But I think you kind of see in the other transfer portal additions that they've made, they're kind of going the route of spending the money on other areas of the roster that are going to make the running backs look better that they already have. Specifically, with the offensive line, I would say they're spending a lot of money on proven players that will block and create bigger holes for the running backs that they already have that they're trying to keep on the roster. So I guess, Elliot, if you want to start off, you can go ahead and give your thoughts.
Yeah. Even last offseason, we were all like, what? Because Emmett Johnson, at that time, he had a good last 2 games once Dana Holgorsen took over, or like 2024 season. And so we were all kind of just like, what are we going to do? Is Emmett Johnson going to break out? We're just hoping that he breaks out because, we didn't really have anybody. And the only guy we really went after was Marty Brown from North Dakota State. And he ended up at Miami this past year. And so, we kind of took, as fans, we're taking a chance. And maybe that staff knew that Emmett Johnson was going to have a good season. Maybe not as good as he ended up having, being the Big Ten back of the year. But yeah, I mean, like I said before, Mekhi Nelson did put his best foot forward in that bowl game. Having pretty much a breakout game for him. Hadn't had a big of opportunity before then, and when he got his chance, he really took it and ran with it. And then I think Mosey has great upside. He can be a receiving back for sure, coming in as a wide receiver. So and switching to running back, I think he can for sure be a third down guy or just come in on certain packages. And then, we have Quentin Ives and Jamal Rhule. I think Ives is, if he can stay healthy, I think he can be a pretty good back, more of a bruiser like kind of Dante Dowdell was 2 years ago. But yeah. Anything you got, Will?
Yeah, just looking at this from the outside in, I'm kind of divided by Rhule and up until this point not bringing a running back in, but I do like what Trevor said in that they're kind of relying on that offensive line to find holes. Mosey, if he can find that hole, he has that quick acceleration, and if he just gets the blocks, he's gonna get to the next level. And guys like Ives, Mekhi Nelson, we've already seen them succeed to some extent. So I'm not against Rhule not bringing in a running back, but I would have loved to see them bring in a star, obviously, but I'm optimistic going into next year at the running back position nonetheless.
Sure. Yeah. No, I like it. The other, I guess the other talking point that we can have is, a kid like Jamarian Parker entered the transfer portal. I feel like coming out of high school, I'm pretty sure he was a 4-star recruit. He seemed, like he had a lot of potential. And then, obviously Kenneth Williams, who probably didn't get the running back reps that he was wanting and is maybe, looking for a more featured role at his next school. So it's tough to see, guys go. But I would say, from everything they've done, if they truly believed they needed a running back, they would have, probably searched harder to get one through the portal. It's not like there was a shortage of them by any means. So, yeah, I would say if they're confident, there's no reason that probably most fans shouldn't feel confident about it as well. So I guess if you guys want to move on to the next one, we can go into tight end. That was also super, super quiet. They didn't have any players enter the transfer portal. Only one player graduated, Heinrich Harburg. Maybe he'll try a shot at the NFL. But they're returning Luke Sorensen, who's the honorable mention All Big Ten tight end, which is obviously we know his worth. Carter Nelson, he was the number 4 tight end in the 2024 recruiting cycle. So obviously he's got a ton of potential. And then a kid like Caden Echternock, he played more of a kind of a blocking role, I guess, is what you'd say. Danny King's coming back. Matt Markway is kind of a big question mark as well. I know he started a game at LSU his freshman season, and kind of came to Nebraska and fell into their lap. But I feel like the room's full of potential. And I guess, Will, if you just want to kind of give your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, the tight end position was something that started off really well last season for Nebraska. I mean, Luke Lindenmeyer came out of the blue, had a really great start of the season, and just kind of fell apart near the end. And you could blame that on Dylan falling down, but I mean, the main guy that I'm looking at next year is Carter Nelson. I mean, some people say he switched to wide receiver. I'm not fully convinced of that. I could see him emerging back into the tight end role with them not picking up another transfer. But also a guy like Mac Markaway. I mean, he's battled injuries throughout his whole career, which sucks because we've seen that potential, and a lot of Nebraska fans have optimism in him being a great tight end. And I think if this tight end room can stay healthy, I don't think it's really going to be a problem going into next year.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm not going to fully say this, but I feel like the tight end room has some of the highest ceiling, out of most of his position groups on this team. Because, you have Carter Nelson, who was the number 4 tight end coming out of high school. And, he had a lot of adjusting to do. I think he played 8-man football in high school. And so that's a big jump, a big difference into 11-man. But, Luke Lindenmeyer showed lots of flashes last year. And then, I just feel like Mac Markway could really be a good chess piece next year. If he can stay healthy, I feel like he could really, I don't know. I feel like he could be a really good tight end for us. I mean, it's all, kind of speculation because we really haven't seen him play. He hasn't played too much as an injury. And, a guy like Thomas Fidone went through that a lot, and he had all the potential in the world. So, the best availability is availability, I think is what it's saying, is something along those lines. But, staying healthy, for Mac Markway next year, I think is big for him to, have a breakout year.
Sure. Yeah. I guess we didn't talk about it either, but Luke Sorensen is coming in the 2026 class. I think the staff definitely really is excited about what he can offer. I believe he played on the offensive line throughout his career in high school, and then just kind of briefly transitioned when he became an upperclassman to the tight end room. So I think that's a kid that's really raw, but at some point he's going to factor in. And I like what I see from him. So we'll go ahead and go to the wide receiver room after that. Relatively quiet as well. I think they kind of prioritized other positions of need at that point. But they did add Quasi Gilmore. He comes from UCLA. He led them in receiving yards, receptions, and touchdowns this year, I do believe. He was a wide receiver 1, so I would say that's a pretty big grab. Elliot, if you want to talk about the rest of the room.
Yeah, and you said this in the live stream, I think, the other day, but we have 3 guys that led the team in receiving, in Isaiah Hunter, Quasi Gilmore, and Ja'Cory Barney. So that is awesome in itself. You just have 3 receivers, who have the potential to be the leading receiver for a team, and so that's just going to make it even harder for defenses to scheme. And I feel like they all have different skill sets too. I mean, Isaiah Hunter, a lot of people have said that he runs like a running back. So, when he's getting those tunnel screens, and we saw, he took one to the house, losing a shoe on the way. And then Ja'Cory Barney, who has insane speed and seems to make everybody miss. And then you have a guy like Quasi Gilmer, who I feel like could be a deep threat for us. I feel like that is something that we have been missing in the last few years. I feel like we really just haven't had a deep threat since Trey Palmer. You haven't had a guy who can just stretch the field at any given point. And, I think we saw that, when he played us 2 years ago, for Dylan's freshman year. He had I think maybe at least one big grab on us. And so, I feel like this room has all the potential. And I feel like we said that the last 2 or 3 years, I'm just kind of just waiting for them to really have a really good year. Because, last year was pretty good, but I feel like I still expected more for them.
Yep. Will, do you want to chime in?
Yeah. Just looking at this receiver room as it is right now, I have tons of optimism going to last year compared to last season. This is an older room. We have 3 solutenable wide receiver 1s. I'm really excited about Quasi Gilmer. He's still on the younger side, still has 2 seasons left of eligibility, I think. And when you look at this from a developmental standpoint, I'm a little worried about the younger guys like Cortez Mills and a couple of guys in that area, but other than that, and what I mean, well, I should have elaborate on that. I mean, I'm just a little worried because guys like these in modern day college football, they're going to get a little impatient, and it's evident that we have our three top targets next year at wideout. So that's really the only area of concern I have for the wide receiver position going into next year. But other than that, I'm excited to see what three top receivers can do on the field with a veteran quarterback.
Sure. One other thing that we didn't hit on either was, Janarin Bonner coming back. He was injured, in the Cincinnati game, and Dana Holgerson had a quote. I don't know exactly what he said, but essentially he said, it was a huge loss to the offense and just what they wanted to do, and they struggled throughout the whole season, trying to kind of find someone to replace him. I don't necessarily think he's a stretch the field receiver. But from a blocking standpoint and just having a veteran in the room, I think that's going to be a positive coming back. And then, to your point, Will, there's a ton of kids in there that potentially could get impatient, but they have a ton of potential in there. I would say at least as of now, depth wise, we're in a really good spot moving forward at wide receiver. So I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up the offense with the offensive line. They returned two starters, Elijah Pritchett and Justin Evans. And, Gunnar Gatula's in that. Tyler Knack, he started the game. But for the most part, they have the two returning starters, and then they made three portal additions that I would say are pretty big adds. I definitely think from a monetary standpoint, those guys definitely cost some pretty high dollar amounts. So I guess, Elliot, if you want to go ahead and maybe just chime in on the three that they added.
Yeah. And one thing that I've been just thinking about this whole time, with a guy like Jeep Wade and Lonnie Teasley, especially Jeep Wade, a proven O-line coach, kind of gets me thinking, like, do players come in with that good of a coach with maybe a discounted price? Because, like, are you going to go take a chance at, a school that's going to pay you more, but you might not get, fully developed or get that chance to go to the NFL? Whereas you can go play for a guy like Jeep Wade who's putting guys in the NFL. And so, just wanted to put that in there quick. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about these three guys. I think I said this too. We're going to have, if these guys do end up starting along with Pritchett and Evans, we'll have 5 linemen over 300 pounds, and mass moves mass. So when you have got 5 guys over 300 pounds on the offensive line, and with the new coaches, I think they're going to be moving bodies all the time. And so, I mean, that's just going to help the running game even more, and, help give Calandria time in the pocket too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to keep it short and simple with what I think here at the O-line. I mean, I think we've had some great additions, but what I think it's going to come down to next year, if this team wants to win games, is it's going to come at the tackle position. I mean, you look at last year for Emmett Johnson's success, it was outside the hashes in those O-tackle blocks, and especially with the mobile quarterback in Calandria, you're going to need good pocket presence from the tackles, but also you're going to need to escape and run. So the tackle position is going to be huge next year. So that's what I think.
Sure. Even depth pieces, I kind of touched on it, but like a Gunnar Gatula, he started. To Tyler Knack, he started. You have a bunch of young players too that I guess you guys haven't really talked about yet, but like a Sam Sledge and a Grant Bricks, those guys are highly recruited out of high school, and they're starting to, there's a whole group of guys that are starting to get in their 3rd and 4th year in the program, and that's kind of the money year where they start, really start to show their worth. So I think, and I'm hoping, and I know Nebraska's obviously hoping that some of those guys under Wade and Teasley, have a development, over spring ball and into fall camp, they can come and contribute if someone goes down. So on paper, I think there's a lot of good, those additions are very good. And, they kind of limited what they lost through the portal. But ultimately I would say the fresh faces in there, it's going to be nice for Nebraska to kind of have some new names in there and hit a little bit of a reset. So we'll go ahead and go to the defensive line then. New coach, Corey Brown, comes in from Miami, Ohio. on paper, he looks pretty good. I think they had 44, maybe 42 sacks last year.
Yes.
Regardless, that's almost double what Nebraska had. And obviously, not all of those are coming from the defensive line, but it is encouraging to see that his old position group at his old school got after the quarterback and stopped the run at a pretty high level. So yeah, Elliot, I guess if you just want to kind of do a flyover of the defensive line room.
Yeah. This was probably the weak point of the defense this past season. And you definitely needed a reset there with the coach, and the whole scheme I think kind of went into that too. But we had a lot of young guys in there that you can hope like Winery can continue to build off some of that momentum he had last year. And you lost a guy like Keanu Davis that had some potential. But that's sad that I didn't get to see what it could have been, because I feel like he would fit better in this new scheme for sure. But we're bringing in Anthony Jones. This will be, I think, his fourth or fifth school, I think.
Fifth, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like he has some potential there, and hopefully, he finds his right place here. And then we have the Iowa Western D lineman, who had 11.5 sacks, I think, this past season. And I think obviously that's JUCO, but I feel like if you're a gamer, you're a gamer. So I feel like he could find a good place on this defense and ball out. And then we also added Jasir Whittington. He's a bit on the smaller end, height wise, but he has weighs pretty good. I think he's like 290, close to 300. So that's good. We're adding some size there. And then I'm thinking we're gonna add Owens Stoudemire too from Boston College. I feel like that's going to be another good add. I feel like what we're missing here, though, is some edge rushers. I mean, we have, Winery, and I feel like, it was said maybe Lenhart might be too big to play edge, but I feel like he can shed some weight too and play the edge too, and maybe Pedshock. But I feel like what we're missing here still is an edge rusher out of the portal, which is kind of, the portal closes tonight. They can still take visits, but, I feel like we do need some edge help on the D line.
Sure. I'll before Will goes, I guess to your point, I would personally say I think they're kind of banking on a guy like Williams Winery to develop into that guy, and kind of become that guy that not necessarily going to become a Sioux, but it's been a long time since Nebraska's had kind of a go-to defensive lineman that is a household name. And I think maybe under Brown, or I guess more specifically Roy Manning, who will be the edge coach next year. I think they're really hoping that he will kind of take off over the next couple of months and come into his sophomore season that much better. So I guess, Will, if there's anything that you want to add in, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys covered it pretty well, but one of the things about last year that made the D line one of the worst in the countries was they didn't really start picking it up, especially in the run game towards the end of the season. And one of the things that's going to have to happen next year is they're going to have to pick it up from the get-go. And I mean, Nebraska is a historically good and even great D-line producing team. So, I mean, it was out of the ordinary, but we're going to need to lock it back in next year from the get-go, week one. And our D-line, especially the edge, Nwaneri, Whittington, all of them combined, they're just going to need to lock it in from the start.
Yep. I definitely agree. I don't think you can't go to another season, hoping that 19 sacks is going to get it done. I wrote about it, but they're not. It's not like they're chasing 3 to 5 sacks next year to kind of get to that next level. I mean, they need to have probably 10 to 15 more sacks to kind of really become a solid defense in that stat category. And then I do think the 4-man front is going to tremendously help get stopping the run, just having that much more weight up on the line of scrimmage. So okay, we'll go ahead and take a look at linebacker. I personally probably have the most optimism out of this position group, potentially on the entire roster. I think the additions that they made, specifically 2 of them, I think they're studs, and I think they're going to come in right away, and they're going to change the defense. It's a position group that lost a lot of production last year between Javin Wright, Dasan McCullough, and Marquise Watson-Trent. And, all 3 of those guys are done playing at Nebraska. So they needed to replace those 3 players. And I think they did a pretty good job at that. But Elliot, if you want to go ahead and talk about the linebacker group.
Yeah. So, we have a great young group of guys in that room with Shavers, Merritt, and even Christian Jones, Willis McGahee. And I don't know, maybe Willis McGahee bumps into edge in this new defense because you play more of a jack. I feel like you could play edge, but we'll talk about him here for sure.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I really like the Owen Chambliss ad. I mean, I really don't think anybody looks at that ad and says, I don't really like that because, lots of proven production. So, I mean, I'm really excited about adding that. And I said in live stream, I feel like we've kind of missed just a guy that you're always relying, like he's super reliable. I mean, we had that with Bullock. I mean, John Bullock was really good. And I think Chambliss can even be even better than that, with his bringing sacks and stuff like that too. But yeah, like you said too, and Chambliss would have led the team with sacks this year if he was on our team. So
yeah,
I mean, and that's from the interior linebacker position. So yeah, I'm like you said, really optimistic about this group.
Good.
Yeah, I
Will,
really love
what do you got?
Yeah, I really love how Elliot you brought up Chambliss's sacking ability. I mean, I'm looking a little bit more into this than maybe I should, but this gives me a lot more optimism, especially with the new defensive front, about blitzing. I mean, Nebraska loves to blitz. They have in the past, and something that's going to be huge next year is their ability to succeed on the blitz and get to the quarterback, especially Big Ten college football quarterbacks. They're not going to handle the blitz as well as a veteran NFL quarterback will. So the blitz is going to be huge next year, especially in Chambliss, but also his ability in coverage. I mean, he had an interception last year. It's just going to be the linebacker position is going to be huge next year and could really define how the season goes.
Yeah. I will say this too, regardless of what you guys, people think of the defensive line room and whether they have enough size in there, the additions that they made at linebacker kind of are in an attempt to make up for that. Both Foster and Chambliss are, I think, 6'3" and 230 pounds. Those are huge linebackers, and they have experience. Vincent Shavers is an animal. I think he's had 2 or 3 forced fumbles in his career to this point, so he's coming back. All 3 players have 2 more years of eligibility remaining too, so they have a plan for the present right now with those 3, and for the future with Dawson Merritt and Christian Jones. So I would say that room is really looking good heading into next year. So I guess that brings us to the defensive backs, which is kind of the last position group, and Addison Williams, I think a lot of people on the staff would tell you that he's probably one of the most liked coaches, assistant coaches, and I think he does a great job. You got Danny Odom coming in, a 5-star kid, and I think he's got a lot of promise, and he'll have the opportunity to maybe fight for a starting role. But they added 3 defensive backs through the portal, and obviously that's a position group that has well over 20 kids already in the room. So yeah, Elliot, I guess if you just want to give your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and to build off of what you said about Addison Williams, he was a guy that on the last defensive staff that I was really hoping that they would retain, when they brought in Rob Orge, because, as guy that focuses on recruiting, I see the guys that he's going after in this 27 class and the caliber of recruits he's going after, and they're actually, interested in Nebraska is super high. And, obviously you're not always going to hit on those high caliber guys, but, the hit rate's going to be a lot higher than, a 3-star. And so, I'm really excited about, what he can do as a recruiter, but he had a really good, the defensive backs were pretty good last year. And I feel like they return a lot of the core too, with Andrew Marshall and Donovan Jones, Rex Guthrie, Justin Rhett, and even Caleb Benning, who came in when needed and played pretty good. Still young, still some developing there, and they brought in McDougal, who's going to know the system already that Rob Orch is going to bring in, and so he can help the young guys out and they adapt to the new system and play well. And then you got bring a guy in like Victor Evans and Jason Shiggs. Those guys. Jason Shiggs coming from Towson. I think that's a D2 or FCS, one of the two. But they're both, some good ads here. And I think, they could both compete for starting jobs, and, just adding good bodies to the, defensive backs room, just continue to add competition, and they're just going to make everybody better.
Yeah, I agree with you, Elliot, there. And I'm going to keep it short here, but the guy I've had my eye on this whole transfer portal is Dwayne McDougal. I mean, he's a big safety back there. I mean, he had 4 interceptions last year, and that alone is impressing me. But he also had a forced fumble that I really like, and I just think his presence in the back half of the field is going to be huge next year. I mean, Big Ten quarterbacks don't always love to throw it deep, but if he can step up for some of those lower level throws and undercut the receivers, I mean, turnovers are going to be a huge part of next season. And if he can have another 4 interception season, I think we're going to be well off in the secondary.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. Obviously the player to kind of watch right away is McDougall, just coming from San Diego State with the experience that he has, under Orch's system. But to your point, Will, I think McDougall has 6 interceptions in his career and closing in on 150 career tackles. So he's about as proven as they come in the portal, and it was a really big ad. Obviously he's coming from San Diego State, but that shouldn't distract anybody from kind of underscoring, how important of an addition it is to Nebraska's defensive backfield. They lost, Cia Wright, Deshaun Singleton, Malcolm Hartzog entered the portal, and then even a guy like Marquise Buford, is obviously gone. So I added it up at one point, and I think it was well over 150 starts. I scratched that. It's 110 starts in their careers as Huskers. That group that they lost. So they're losing a lot of production, but there's guys like Andrew Marshall and Donovan Jones, Rex Guthrie, that they trust, and at the end of the day, they're still bringing about half of that group that ranks second in the country, against the pass back. So whether they're second in the country again, that might be pretty hard to do, but I would be pretty optimistic about that. And I think it would only get better as long as, the pass rush, improves as well. It's a hell of a lot easier to, look good in coverage if there's a pass rush that's affecting the quarterback as well. So, I guess I don't know how you guys want to wrap it up after that. But I would say there's reason for optimism at nearly every position group. They added 17 total players, and they're not technically done yet. The portal doesn't close until midnight tonight, and that's just for people that are going to enroll or enter the portal. So Nebraska can keep adding, and it does appear that they are interested in adding specifically on the defensive line. So I would totally expect more news to come, over the coming days. But for now, I would say their roster on paper, they added experience, they added size. And they added players that understand, Orch's defense, at least on the defensive side of the ball. So yeah, I would say Nebraska's sitting pretty good looking forward to 2026. There's plenty to fix, as we all know, but you got to add players that you feel confident are going to be able to help you fix that. And I think Nebraska did exactly that. So.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add is that we also added a long snapper, and he's top long snapper in the portal. And we saw that 2 years ago that not having a good long snapper could really hinder the field goal kicking game. So having that for sure is going to help us out. So excited to get him in there, especially with his athletic ability too. So yeah.
Okay,
Will, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I have a question. So I'm not trying to verge off from the main subject, but I mean, there's obviously been rumors about Mike Eckler leaving. Do you think that if he does leave, that could make our new long snapper re-enter, or no?
I don't. I think it's kind of interesting, and I'm not fully, knowledgeable on it. But I think if Mike Eckler were, if that news became official, I think you'd fear losing more of like a Richie Wilson than the long snapper. I'm sure, they probably added him knowing that this conversation with USC had been going on for maybe a while. So he was probably under the impression that could potentially be, a factor when he committed to Nebraska. I would hope, at least, if they knew by then. But yeah, no, I don't see that he would re-enter the portal by any means. I guess you're just kind of hoping that Nebraska can continue doing what they did this year, on special teams, even if it, regardless of how it ends up.
For sure.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with you. I think he's going to stay if Mike Eckler leaves. So yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I guess that kind of wraps up everything transfer portal wise. Like I said, they're still recruiting. Defensive linemen for sure, we know. So, potentially commitments are down the road, but, the transfer portal entry date wraps up at midnight. And for the most part, that's the class. So, I guess that's it. This has been Big Red Fever. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.
Go Big Red.
Yeah.
Go
Big Red.